Good evening and welcome to another Fortean Words. It's even spookier tonight because I'm on my own. Woo! We've got just me, and chat is jumping as usual. Okay, nobody's watching. Bit of a quiet one tonight. Evening interdimensional. You've got me on my own tonight, so it's going to be a bit stuttery, and I'll try not to say and trying too much like I did during the the L. Ron Hubbard episode, which was awful. So I thought what I'd do is, because I'm on my own, I would read out some real life exorcisms. Because, yeah, they are pretty fucking spooky. I think they're pretty spooky anyway. So, here we go. Willie, Hobbit's got sickle cell Ebola AIDS. And if he talks, he'll cough like a leper, he says. Like a true leper, when you played cards, did you throw your hand in? Budum. Anyway, that's me. So let's listen to the story of the demon. I'll probably only do an hour as well because I don't think my throat can take 2 hours. So let's talk about the story of the demon's daughter. The victim of one of the most detailed instances of demonic possession in the 20th century America was a Midwestern woman whose real name was never made public. As a child, she'd been notably pious, but when she was 14, blasphemous inner voices interfered with her religious practice, frightened her and caused her much shame. In the years that followed, she was examined by several doctors, finding no physical illness or abnormality. They unanimously concluded that her personality was neither nervous nor hysterical. She was normal in the fullest sense. Despite this diagnosis, Mary, a pseudonym, names have been changed to protect the guilty, began to manifest. She recognised the signs of demonic possession. She would become furiously enraged and would foam at the mouth when a priest blessed her, and could infallibly tell when an object had been secretly blessed or sprinkled with holy water. She also understood languages she'd never been taught. In 1928, when she was 40 years old, Mary agreed to undergo exorcism. Her exorcist was to be Father Theophilus Reisinger, a 60-year-old Capuchin monk in the community of St. Anthony at Marathon, Wisconsin. A man with considerable experience in the application of the ancient rite. For the place of exorcism, Father Theophilus chose a Franciscan convent in Erling, Iowa, where the pastor, Father Joseph Steiger, was an old friend of his. On her first night in the convent, Mary became furious. I wonder if this is Mary Loves Dicks. Mary Loves Dick. Mary became furious when she realised that holy water had been sprinkled on her food. She purred like a cat and refused to eat until unblessed food was put before her. The next morning, Father Theophilus and Father Steiger began the exorcism, for which a large room had been made ready. A number of nuns who were physically strong stood by to help, and Mary was laid on a mattress on an iron bed. The exorcism had scarcely begun when she became unconscious, with her eyes closed so tightly they could not be forced open. They remained in this state throughout the service. A shrill cry filled the room, loud but seemingly far off at the same time. Then a din of howling like wild animals came from Mary's lips. "Silence, Satan!" Father Theophilus shouted, but the unearthly tortured clamour continued unabated. Neither Father Steiger nor the nuns could long endure the howling or the sight of the woman's body and face, hideously twisted and distorted by the onslaught. From time to time they had to leave the room, but Father Theophilus, accustomed to the screaming of devils at the pain of exorcism, remained constant and attentive throughout. Day after day, this is going to be great for yawning, this one. Sorry, Peel. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing, Dom. Theophilus P. Wildebeest. Theophilus P. Exorcist. Yeah. Neither Father Steiger nor the nuns could long... Oh, no, I've done that. Day after day, the exorcism continued, and with it the howling, the twisted limbs, and excrement and vomit in vast quantities. Sounds much like Hobbit at the moment. Although the victim had taken only a spoonful of milk or water during the entire day to sustain her, she sometimes disgorged bowlfuls of what seemed to be shredded tobacco leaves or other unsavoury materials. At last, Father Theophilus learned the names of the devils infesting the patient. One called himself Beelzebub. Told him that Mary had been possessed since she was 14 and that she'd been cursed by her own father, who had joined the company of possessing demons after his own death and damnation. This demon, Mary's father Jacob, spoke with Father Theophilus, revealing that he had frequently tried to force his daughter into an incestuous relationship, but that she had always resisted him, and that he had uttered a curse that she be entered by devils to destroy her chastity. A female demon who gave her name as Mina in life, Jacob's mistress, joined the colloquy. She was damned, she said, because she had murdered 4 of her own children. A 4th demon, Judas, confessed that he intended to drive Mary to suicide. Whatever was expressing itself in these voices at times demonstrated an uncanny knowledge of things that could not have been known to Mary. On one occasion, as a test, a piece of paper with a Latin inscription was placed on Mary's head. The nuns, thinking the words were a prayer, were surprised to see the demons tolerated its presence. In fact, the words had no religious content at all, but when a second piece of paper, which had been secretly blessed, was placed on the woman's head, it was immediately torn to pieces. As the painful weeks of exorcism continued, relations between the 2 priests deteriorated, and Father Steiger began to wish that he had never allowed the exorcism to take place in his parish. But Father Theophilus viewed this development as the work of the devil, who seemed to regard Father Steiger with special malice. "Just wait," a demonic voice said to Father Steiger. "One day, until the end of the week. When Friday comes, then..." On his way back from visiting a sick parishioner on Friday, Father Steiger, remembering the demon's threat, drove with special care. Suddenly, just as he was about to cross a bridge over a deep ravine, a black cloud seemed to descend on his car. He could see nothing, but he felt the car smash violently into the railing of the bridge and then teeter on the edge. A farmer ploughing a nearby field heard the crash and came running. Slowly the pastor crawled out of the debris. He had no serious injuries, despite the fact that even the car's steering wheel had been crushed. When he reached the convent, a chorus of malicious laughter greeted him in the exorcism room. "Today," the demon screeched, "he pulled in his proud neck and was out-pointed. I certainly showed him up today. What about your new auto, that dandy car that was smashed into smithereens? It served you right." Was it true, the nuns and Father Theophilus asked. "Yes, what he says is true. My auto is a complete wreck, but he was not able to harm me personally. Our aim was to get you," the demon said, "but somehow our plans were thwarted. It was your powerful patron saint, St. Joseph, who prevented us from harming you." During these and all other conversations, the lips of the possessed woman did not move at all. She was unconscious and her lips almost never parted. The voices seemed to come from within her. For 2 weeks, the solemn exorcism was repeated without any sign of success. Father Theophilus decided to continue the exorcisms throughout the night, giving Satan and himself no respite. For 3 days and 3 nights he prayed, but the demons held their ground. By the 23rd day, Father Theophilus was near collapse, but now a change began to occur in the demons' behaviour. They were less aggressive and more apt to moan about the tortures the exorcism inflicted on them. Then, after Father Theophilus had demanded in the name of the Trinity that the demons depart, they agreed. On December the 23rd, about 9 p.m, the possessed woman broke free from the grip of her attendants and stood before them. Pull her down, Father Steiger cried, while Father Theophilus blessed her and claimed, "Depart, ye fiends of hell! Begone, Satan! The Lion of Judah reigns!" And then the stiffness left Mary's body and she fell onto the bed. A sound arose, so piercing that the room vibrated. Then a babble of voices repeated the names Beelzebub, Judas, Jacob, Mina, again and again, more faintly, until the final words, "Hell, hell, hell," they disappeared. Then Mary sat up, opened her eyes and quietly smiled. "My Jesus, mercy," she said. "Praise be Jesus Christ." Hobbit says possession and schizophrenia stories have a lot in common. Theophilus P. Wildebeest was Lenny Henry sexually assaulting a woman on a stage, and it actually was. Ian, well done. So the next one I've got is a tragic case. In November 1973, Anneliese Michel, a young student at the University of Wurzburg, West Germany, was taken by her parents to see the parish priest in her hometown of Klingenberg. She had developed some worrisome signs of abnormal behaviour at the university, refusing to eat, flying into violent rages, screaming and trying to attack those around her, and her parents were deeply concerned. In the priest's view, Anneliese was possessed by demons, and he recommended a ritual exorcism. As Roman Catholic procedure requires, the case was investigated by a leading authority on exorcism and demon possession, Father Adolf Rodwick, an 81-year-old Jesuit. Father Rodwick agreed with the priest's diagnosis, and on his recommendation that the regional bishop, Father Joseph Stangl, gave permission for an exorcism to take place. The exorcist chosen for the task were the Reverend Arnold Renz, the Reverend Ernst Alt. Ernst Alt Tab. By then, Anneliese had been receiving medical treatment for epilepsy for 4 years. On July the 1st, 1976, after several months of exorcism, Anneliese died of malnutrition and dehydration at the age of 23. She weighed 70 pounds. On March 2nd, 1978, two exorcists and Anneliese's parents were charged with negligent homicide on the grounds they had allowed the young girl's condition to deteriorate to the point of death without seeking medical help for her. Bishop Stangl and Father Rodwick, who seemed not to have known that medical help was being withheld, were not charged. In April 1978, the two priests were found guilty and were given suspended prison sentences for 6 months. For the Roman Catholic Church, the death of Anneliese Michel was a nightmare come true, demonstrating maybe, the dangers inherent in the ritual of exorcism and the murky distinctions between priestly and medical responsibility. In Father Rodwick's own handbook on possession and exorcism, originally published in 1963 and translated to English under the title Possessed by Satan, priests are urged to consider medical explanations for apparent possession. One section of the book is in fact titled, Let's Not Always Think of Possession. Jerry Mazinski, we need to we need to do one on Jerry Mazinski sometime. Very interesting guy. Father Rodwick, outlining the bishop's responsibilities, says that he may appoint a commission of theologians and physicians to undertake a further investigation, and warns that exorcists must guard against the role of physician, guard against playing the role of physician when encountering physiological symptoms. He quotes the authoritative Roman ritual of exorcism. The exorcist should avoid giving or recommending any sort of medication to the possessed. That is the physician's task. Although such statements clearly suggest that a physician may sometimes be needed before and during an exorcism, there is no stipulation that a doctor must be in attendance. This deficiency in church procedure was corrected, at least in Germany, after the conviction of the two priests in the Michel case. In May 1978, the German Bishops' Conference ruled that future no exorcisms would be permitted unless a doctor was present. Well, we got it. So, in 1865, something ghastly entered the lives of two young boys in the small town of Ilfurth in Alsace, in France. They were Joseph and Theobald Brunner, nearly 8 and 10 years old respectively, the sons of a farmer, according to records kept by Father Carl Bray, the parish priest. The first signs that something was seriously wrong with the children was their fascination with diabolic things and their aversion to anything of a religious nature. While lying in the bed, the children used to turn to the wall, paint horrible devil faces on it, and then speak to the faces and play with them. If while one of the possessed was asleep, a rosary was placed on his bed, he would immediately hide under the covers and refuse to come out of hiding until the rosary was removed. More extraordinary were the physical contortions the boys underwent. They entangled their legs every 2 or 3 hours in an unnatural way. They knotted them so intricately it was impossible to pull them apart. Yet suddenly they could untangle them with lightning speed. At times the boys stood simultaneously on their heads and legs, bent backwards, their bodies arched high. No amount of outside pressure could bring their bodies into a normal position until the devil saw fit to give those objects of his torture some temporary peace. By these and other bizarre manifestations, Father Bray was persuaded that brothers were the victims of demonic possession. At times their bodies became bloated as if about to burst. When this happened, the boy would vomit, whereby yellow foam, feathers, and seaweed would come out of his mouth. Often their clothes were covered with evil-smelling feathers. No matter how often their shirts and outer clothing would change, new feathers and seaweed would appear. These feathers covered their bodies in some inexplicable way, filled the air with such a stench they had to be burned. If further evidence the boys were in the grip of a supernatural power had been needed, it was given in their frequent displays of clairvoyance. Theobald several times predicted the death of a person correctly. 2 hours before the death of Frau Miller, the boy knelt on his bed and acted as if he was ringing a morning bell. Another time he did the same thing for a whole hour. When he was asked for whom he was ringing, the boy answered, "For Gregor Kniegal." As it happened, Kniegal's daughter was visiting in the house. Shocked and angry, she told Theobald, "You liar! My father's not even ill. He was working on the new boys' seminary building as a mason." Theobald answered, "That may be, but he just had a fall. Go ahead and check on it." The facts bore him out. The man had fallen from a scaffold, breaking his neck. This happened at the very moment that Theobald made the bell-ringing motions. No one in Ilfrith had been aware of the accident. I can think of plenty of people that need an exorcism. Yeah, there are a few. When their parents, the father and Carl Bray, when their parents and Father Carl Bray decided that the exorcism was the only effective way of helping the boys, Theobald was sent to St. Charles Orphanage at easy for me to say, Schiltigheim near Strasbourg. Dead easy. I do struggle with those German names. The orphanage was run by nuns and its superior was one Father Stumpf. For the first 3 days after his arrival, Theobald, or the diabolic entity, was quiet. But on the 4th day, he said, "I have come, and I am in a rage." One of the nuns asked, who are you?" A non-human voice answered, "I am the Lord of Darkness." Later on, Joseph was also sent to the orphanage. Throughout the prolonged period of exorcism performed by Father Stumpf, the demonic possession of the two brothers was manifested in many ways. Both boys, for instance, became infested with red head lice, which multiplied so quickly that 3 or 4 people with brushes and combs were not able to keep pace with them. Eventually, the priest poured holy water on the vermin and they disappeared. In all, the possession of Theobald and Joseph Brunner lasted 4 years before they were freed by the rites of exorcism. Theobald died 2 years later on April the 3rd when he was 16. Joseph, in whom the symptoms had been less severe, died in 1882. Ooh, spooky. This one's a pact with Satan. Satan. When Clara Germana Silly was 16 years old, she made a pact with Satan, or so she told her confessor, Father Erasmus Horner, at the mission school she had attended since she was 4 years old. In the weeks following her confession, Germana began to behave wildly, and on August the 20th, 1906, she alarmed the sisters in charge by tearing her clothes, breaking one of the posts on her bed, growling and grunting like an animal, and seeming to converse with invisible beings. Sounds like your average leftist, doesn't she? In a more lucid moment, she called out, "Sister, please call Father Erasmus. I must confess and tell everything. But quick, or Satan will kill me. He has me in his power. Nothing blessed is with me. I have thrown away all the medals you gave me." Later that day, she called out, "You have betrayed me. You have promised me days of glory, but now you treat me cruelly." Until these outbursts began, priests and nuns of the Marian Hill Order Mission in Umzinto, about 50 miles south of Durban, South Africa, had considered Germana a normal, healthy, and somewhat erratic young person. Her condition worsened. Jemima began to manifest the signs by which the Roman Catholic Church identifies cases of demonic possession. Holy water, for example, burned her when she was sprinkled with it or given it to drink, but when she was sprinkled with ordinary water, with which the font had been secretly filled, she simply laughed. She complained vigorously whenever a cross was brought near her and could detect the presence of a religious object, such as a small fragment of a cross, even when it had been heavily wrapped or otherwise concealed. Jemima also developed more wide-ranging clairvoyance. She was able to describe the daily details of a priest's journey from Africa to Rome, including the addresses of the place where he stayed along the way. And to shame one young man who made fun of her, she revealed scandalous details of his private life, complete with dates, times and names. Among Jemima's physical manifestations, her confessor reported numerous instances of levitation. Jemima floated on often 3, 4 and up to 5 feet in the air, sometimes vertically, with her feet downward and at other times horizontally, with her whole body floating above her bed. She was in a rigid position. Even her clothing did not fall downward, as would have been normal. Instead, her dresses remained tightly attached to her body and legs. If she was sprinkled with holy water, she moved down immediately and her clothing fell loosely onto her bed. This type of phenomenon took place in the presence of witnesses, including outsiders. Even in church, where she would be seen by everyone, she floated above her seat. Some people tried to pull her down forcibly, holding onto her feet, but it proved to be impossible. Defo something to it, but those Italians can be a bit dramatic. I don't think I've done any Italian ones. It's Alsace, France, Germany. What's the first one? American. So yeah, we ain't done the Italians yet. Another curious physical capacity that astonished the attending priests and nuns was her ability to transform herself into a snake-like creature. Her whole body would become as flexible as rubber, and she would writhe along the floor. At times her neck seemed to elongate, thereby enhancing the serpent-like impression she gave. Once, while she was being restrained, she darted like lightning at a nun kneeling in front of her and bit the poor woman on the arm. The wound showed the marks of Jemima's teeth and a small red puncture resembling a snake bite. On September the 10th, 1906, permission for Jemima's exorcism was given, to be formed by Father Erasmus, her confessor, and by Father Mansuet, I don't know, the mission rector. The rites began in the morning, lasted till noon, and then began again at 3 p.m. and continued well into the night. The next morning they began at 8 and lasted until 10. Under fierce pressure from the two exorcists and the possessing demon said it would signal its departure by an act of levitation. This occurred before 170 witnesses in the mission chapel. Prayers of thanks were later given. In January 1907, while Father Erasmus was away, Jemima suffered a relapse and made a new pact with the devil. On April the 24th, a new exorcism began. It lasted for 2 days and was successful, the devil's final departure being signalled by an incomparably foul smell. Yeah, that's that. I've run out of exorcism stories now, so I've actually got some. What are they called? Some witch doctoring. We'll do a bit of witch doctoring now. While he was in the Congo in 1682, the Italian missionary Father Jerome Marola de Sorrento, he's got all the names, hasn't he, heard a curious story demonstrating the sometimes fatal effects of superstitious fear. During a journey, a young black man had spent the night at a friend's house, and in the morning the friend had prepared a wild hen for breakfast. This was a food that young people were forbidden to eat by an inviolable tribal custom, and the visitor asked his friend if the dish he prepared was really wild hen. The host replied that it was not, and the young guest ate a hearty breakfast. A few years later, the two men met again, and the friend asked his former guest if he would eat a wild hen. No, he said, that was impossible. He had solemnly warned by a magician never to eat that food. The friend laughed and asked why he should refuse to eat the dish now when he'd been perfectly happy to eat it before. As soon as the guest learned the truth about the breakfast his host had once served him, he began to tremble violently, and within 24 hours he was dead, the victim of his own fear. So The active ill effects of a curse can immediately cease if the victim believes that he has been released from it. This indicates that the effects of curses, as recorded since ancient times, are psychosomatic. So that's every single one of them is psychosomatic, every last one. And thus, in accord with relatively recent psychological discoveries, the following incident, which occurred in Australia around 1919, was later reported by Dr. S.M. Lambert during his association with the International Health Division of the Rockefeller Foundation. An example of dramatic reversal, it makes the point. At a mission in Mona Mona in North Queensland, there were many native converts, but on the outskirts of the mission was a group of non-converts, including one Nebo, a famous witch doctor. The chief helper of the missionary was Rob, a native who had been converted. When Dr. Lambert arrived at the mission, he learned Rob was in distress and the missionary wanted him examined. Dr. Lambert made the examination and found no fever, no complaint of pain, no symptoms or signs of disease. He was impressed, however, by the obvious indications that Rob was seriously ill and extremely weak. From the missionary, he'd learned that Rob had a bone pointed at him by Nebo and was convinced that in consequence he must die. Thereupon, Dr. Lambert and the missionary went for Nebo, threatened him sharply that his supply of food would be shut off if anything happened to Rob, and that he and his people would be driven away from the mission. At once, Nebo agreed to go with them and see Rob. He leaned over Rob's bed and told the sick man that it was all a mistake, a mere joke. Indeed, that he had not pointed a bone at him at all. The relief that Dr. Lambert testifies was almost instantaneous. That evening, Rob was back at work, quite happy again and in full possession of his physical strength. So Nebo was a bit rama, weren't he? Demons just seem to use their powers to troll people for a bit. Maybe I'm a demon, says Dom. On Friday the 13th, 1946, a Georgia midwife was called upon to deliver 3 babies in the same area of Okefenokee Swamp. Yeah, that's a real place, really. For some malevolent reason, the woman put a curse on all 3 of the infant girls. She said that one would die before she was 16 years of age, another would be dead before she reached 21, and the third would not live to see her 23rd birthday. The first 2 predictions were violently accurate. One girl at 15 was killed in a fatal automobile accident. The second was killed by gunfire in a nightclub brawl the night before her 21st birthday. 2 years later, in 1969, the third young woman asked to enter a Baltimore hospital, declaring hysterically that she was doomed to die before her 23rd birthday, which was only 3 days away. Although there was apparently nothing wrong with her physically, she was obviously under great emotional stress and was admitted to the hospital for observation. The next morning, just 2 days before the fateful date, the girl was found dead in her bed, the victim evidently of her belief in the power of the midwife's curse. The next one is the relentless Kerditcher. In 1953, an Aborigine named Kinjikabit was flown from his native Arnhem Land in Australia's Northern Territory to a hospital in Darwin, the territorial capital. He had not been injured or poisoned, was not suffering from any known disease, but he was dying. Kinjika survived for 4 days in great pain before entering the hospital, and on the 5th day he died, victim of bone pointing, a method of execution or murder that leaves no trace and almost never fails. The dead man had been a member of the Maili tribe and had broken one of its laws governing incestuous relationships. Following this, he had been summoned before a tribal council and had refused to attend, and in his absence he had been sentenced to death. Kinjika then fled his homeland, and the tribal executioner, the Mulagutwa, I think it's a Mulagua. It was Existence that had the bone gun. The film was messed up like The Naked Lunch. Or, what's the other one? Existence is just like Videodrome is the other one that Existence is more like. The Mulagua made and richly loaded the killing bone, or kundilla. The bone may be human, kangaroo, or emu, or it may be fashioned from wood, so it's not always a bone. The design varies from tribe to tribe. Most are 6 to 9 inches long, pointed at one end and shaved to a smooth roundness at the other end, and a braid of hair is attached to the whole or with a resinous gum derived from the spinifex bush. To be effective, the Kundela must be charged with powerful psychic energy in a complex ritual that must be performed faultlessly. The process is kept secret from women and all who are not members of the tribe. If the condemned man has fled from the village, the loaded bone is given to the Kodija, the tribe's ritual killers. The Kodija take their name from the special slippers they wear when hunting a condemned man. These are woven from cockatoo feathers and human hair and leave virtually no footprints. The hunters clothe themselves with kangaroo hair, which they stick to their skin after first coating themselves with human blood, and they don masks of emu feathers. Usually operating in 2s or 3s, they are relentless and will pursue their quarry for years if necessary. They don't exactly blend in, do they? When the hunters finally corner their man, they approach within 15 feet or so, and one Koditcha or hitman, dropping to his knee, hold the bones in his fist and points it like a pistol. Pew, pew, bit like the pew pew guns from Dead Space. Pew, 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 pew. At this instant, the condemned man is said to be frozen with fear. The Koditcha thrusts the bone towards him and utters a brief piercing chant. He and his fellow hunters then withdraw, leaving the pointed man to his own devices. Then they return to their village. The Kundela is ceremonially burnt. The condemned man may live for several more days or weeks, but convinced of the Kundela's fatal power, his relatives and members of any other tribe he may meet will certainly have heard that he's been pointed, treat him as though he was already dead. The ritual holding of the Kundela creates a psychic counterpart of the bone, a spear of thought, as it has been described, which pierces the condemned man when the bone is pointed at him. Once he's been wounded, the victim's death is certain, though an actual spear has been thrust through him. Ooh, spooky. So, in mid-April 19... So, another story, Song of Death almost. In mid-April 1956, in Arnhem Land, Australia, a young Aborigine named Loya Wulubu fell sick and was taken by airplane to hospital in Darwin. He was unable to eat or drink because although he tried, he could not swallow. However, there was no apparent cause for his malady. Examinations, including x-rays, blood tests, spinal taps, will leave nothing unusual. What was going on in the victim's mind was another matter. He asked an attending Methodist minister to pray for him because he said, "Me been sung and me finish." The singing to which Wulumu referred to was a form of ritual execution practiced by his people. In his case, a group of women requested by his mother-in-law to sing him to death, perhaps in reprisal for some taboo he had broken. To inaugurate the ritual, the women stole Wulumu's spear and throwing stick, Wumera, and put them in a ceremonial log. They then sang the songs that are believed to put the curse of death on the owner of the captured object. After the singing, his club, Nulla Nulla, was displayed in the treetops to signify the successful conclusion of the curse. When Wulumu saw the weapon, he knew he had been what transpired, and that he tried to swallow, and he could not. Wulumu would surely have died had it not been for the iron lung. Because of its respiratory support capability, he became convinced of the white man's magic was greater than that of his tribe. And he was right, of course. What else have we got here? Not all cursed deaths take place in primitive places. The following events, for example, occurred in Oklahoma in 1960. The case involved a man who had been raised by a very domineering mother. When he decided to open a nightclub, she helped him finance it, then stayed on to assist with the management. Some 14 years later, and at age 38, he married and soon after decided to sell the club. His mother warned that if he sold out, something dire will happen to you. 2 years later, after her threat, the man with no prior history of respiratory trouble of any kind began to experience a mild attack of asthma. Nevertheless, he went ahead and sold the club. The day after the transaction, he called his mother to tell about it. She once again told him, "Something will strike you." His asthmatic condition worsened at once and he was rushed to the hospital. A psychiatrist was able to help him to see the link between his illness and his mother's warnings, and the asthmatic condition began to subside. Feeling better, the man's plans for another business, this time without his mother. Then one day he called her to tell about it. She did not try to dissuade him, but told him to expect more dire results if he persisted. Within an hour of that fateful phone call, he had another attack of asthma and died. What else we got? Got another Kundela story. The Kundela is used by Aborigines for initiation ceremonies against their enemies and against those who have broken tribal laws. Within those spheres, its power is awesome. There appears that pew-pew guns are awesome. Idiots tend to succumb to the nocebo. The noble effect. The nocebo. There seems to be only one incidence of a man surviving after being condemned to die by the bone without the antidote of the white man's medicine. The man Alan Webb, a full-blooded Aborigine of the Arunta tribe, had shot a fellow tribesman during a struggle over a rifle. In April 1969, the court found that Webb had been attacked and that the rifle had gone off accidentally. He declared he was not guilty of the manslaughter charge. Outside of the courtroom, after the verdict had returned, Webb was met by the tribal delegation. The white men's court was irrelevant, he was told, and he would have to stand trial before his peers among the Arunta. Webb knew very well the tribe's verdict would what the tribe's verdict would be. He had killed a member of his own tribe, therefore he must die. He promptly left Alice Springs and was sentenced to death in absentia by the Aruntas. You don't want to be grabbed by the Aruntas, do you? Grandad still uses margarine. Is he the next one for the curse? How many have had negative health outcomes when eating bacon due to nocebo? He promptly left Alice Springs and was sentenced to death in absentia by the Aruntas. This time, the Kurdicha had a more difficult task than usual. Their quarry was driving a van and living in it with his wife, 2 children and 3 dogs. He slept with a rifle at his side, ready to be awakened at any moment by the barking of the dogs. By 1976, the date of the last available information, Alan Webb had managed to evade the Kurdicha for 7 years, earning his living, doing odd jobs and moving on whenever he heard the death squad was coming his way. It is probable that where are we? I got lost. It is improbable that anyone has survived an Aborigine death sentence for a longer period, but Webb knew and perhaps still knows that the Kurdicha would never abandon their pursuit. And although he spent his life on the fringe of white society, he realised that if his hunters came close enough to point the Kundela, he would be as good as dead, killed without trace of injury by nothing more substantial than a spear of thought. What else we got here? Should we move on to some zombies now? We've gone from exorcisms to pew pew death squads, and we'll talk about some zombies next. Love and revenge play large roles in voodoo, and one must always be careful not to offend the wrong people. A houngan made advances to a certain girl, but she, being engaged to marry a man whom she loved, rejected him completely. The arranged houngan was heard muttering threats as he departed, and within a few days the girl fell ill and died. Her family brought the body back to their village for burial, then discovered the coffin was ordered from town was too short. The neck had to be bent to fit the body inside. And at the wake, someone accidentally dropped a cigarette on one foot of the corpse, which would left a small burn. They really did not give a shit about this dead body, did they? Oh, Ian will hop on, but he's working. I think I'm doing all right. There's not too many gaps and stuff like that. Just a bit of yawning and some snotty nose. A few months later, it was whispered that the girl had been seen in the company of the houngan she had previously rejected. but there was no evidence and the story was soon forgotten. Then some years later, the girl reappeared at her home. The hound had repented and released all of his zombies. She was positively identified by many people who had attended her funeral, remembered her bent neck and the burn mark on her foot. Oh, they really did fuck her neck up then. Nice. Great funeral. Oh, yeah, so coming up to whet your appetites, people. We've got some new Jeff the Talking material we can do coming up. I think he means new Jeff the Talking Mongoose material we can do talking up. Then that's Jeff Hobbit. That's Jeff the Talking Mongoose. Jeff with a J, even though it's spelled with a G. If ever a zombie learns of what has happened to him, it is said to become totally uncontrollable, and salt is reputed to be a substance that can trigger such awareness. In his book, The Magic Island, published in 1929, William B. Seabrook reported one such horrifying incident which took place a few years earlier. A hound gun named Joseph had a number of zombies who were used as cane cutters at Hasco, the huge factory and plantation of the Haitian American Sugar Company, on the outskirts of Port-au-Prince. Joseph's wife, who was looking after the zombies, made the irrevocable error of feeding them some candy that contained salted peanuts. Upon ingesting the salt, the zombies instantly realised their terrible situation and determinedly set out from their home village. When they arrived, they were recognised by their families, who tried to waylay and talk to them, but the zombies were unstoppable and they pressed on until they reached the cemetery, where they tried desperately to dig their way back into their graves with their bare hands. But as they touched the earth, they reverted to rotting corpses. On a field trip in Haiti in 1930, French anthropologist, Georges de Roquet, had an opportunity most unusual for a Caucasian to observe 4 zombies, although he was not allowed to touch them. De Roquet, who had the advantage of being fluent in Creole, was accompanied by a knowledgeable Haitian guide, recorded the experience in his journal. Toward the evening, we encountered a group of 4 male figures coming from the nearby cotton field, where they had been toiling. I was struck by their peculiar shambling gait, most unlike the lithe walk of other natives. The overseer with them stopped their progress, enabling me to observe them closely for some minutes. They were clothed in rags made from sacking, their arms hung down by their sides, dangling in a curiously lifeless fashion. Their faces and hands appeared to be devoid of flesh, the skin adhering to the bones like wrinkled brown parchment. I also noticed that they did not sweat, although they had been working and the sun was still very hot. I was unable to judge even their approximate ages. They may have been young men or quite elderly. The most arresting feature about them was their gaze. They all stared straight ahead, their eyes dull and unfocused. Anthropologist, definitely, that's it, a bunker, Mojango. They may have been young men or quite elderly. The arresting feature about them was their gaze. They stared straight ahead, their eyes dull and unfocused as if blind. They did not show a spark of awareness to my presence, even when I approached them closely. To test the reflexes of one, I made a stabbing gesture towards his eyes with my pointed fingers. He did not blink or shrink back, but when I attempted to touch his hand, the overseer prevented me, saying that was not permitted. My immediate impression was that those creatures were imbeciles made to work for their keep. Baptiste, however, assured me they were indeed zombies. That is, dead persons resurrected by sorcery and employed as unpaid labourers. De Roquet, who watched as the zombies were locked up in a tiny windowless shed, much smaller and more strongly built than the usual thatched peasant huts, and suggested to Baptiste, his guide, they should investigate this prison. But Baptiste, who until now had shown a cool detachment, became very frightened and insisted they depart immediately, telling De Roquet, who was armed, that a gun was often a useless defence in Haiti. Although, so this is a $12. Were they collecting shopping trolleys? They're gays. Yeah, the zombie gays. You know what the zombie gays is? That's bad, Dom. Although, so this is a $12 slave. Although in general, the educated upper classes in Haiti profess to be sceptical of voodoo, wealth and knowledge, do not necessarily offer them adequate protection against sorcery. A well-to-do society man, a monsieur, had a flat tyre outside a small village. When he got out of the car to change the tyre, he was approached by a small white-bearded old man, actually a houndgun, who offered to obtain help from a friend and suggested that meanwhile the monsieur should return to his home for a coffee. En route, the houndgun confessed that he had used a spell to cause the flat tyre, and over coffee warned the monsieur that there was a wanga, an evil charm, hidden in his car. Noting the monsieurs did amuse disbelief, the houndgun became annoyed and asked his guests if he had known Monsieur Celestin, who had died 6 months earlier. Celestin had been a good friend, and the monsieur replied, whereupon the houndgun asked the monsieur if he would like to see his friend, and without waiting for the answer, cracked his whip 6 times. In response, a man entered the room backward, a figure vaguely familiar to the monsieur. When on the houndgun's order, the man turned round, the monsieur recognised his former friend, Celestin. But this was not quite the Celestin of old. He now stood unmoving, head hanging, face utterly expressionless, speechless, and giving no sign of recognition, a zombie. The monsieur was stunned. The houndgun explains that Celestin's death had been caused by a spell cast by a sorcerer who had then transformed him in a zombie and sold him to the houndgun for $12. They bum you to death. Like that funny Free Palestine bloke. Who's the funny Free Palestine bloke? What else we got here? So this was the wandering zombie. The belief in zombies is not restricted to superstitious peasants is demonstrated by this report attested by a Catholic priest. Aaron Bushnell. I don't think I know that one. It was said that one day in 1959, a zombie shambled into a village in Haiti and wandered in. Hold on. Zombie shambled into a village into Haiti and wandered into the courtyard of a private house, where he was apprehended by the resident. This man tied the zombie's hands and took him to the local police station. The police eventually gave the zombie a glass of salt water to revive his memory. The zombie, his mind cleared, told the police his name. It was discovered that he had an aunt in the village. He was then called in to help clarify the situation. As soon as she arrived, the aunt positively identified her nephew and swore that he had died 4 years previously and that she had attended the burial. When questioned by the village's Catholic priest, the zombie reported that he was just one of many zombies held in a thrall by the local houndgun. Hearing of this, the police, who were terrified of the man's power, offered to return his zombie, but 2 days later, the unfortunate being was found dead. Acting on the assumption that Houndgun had killed the zombie for reporting his activities to authorities, police arrested him for murder. The other zombies were not rescued, however. The Houndgun's wife had herded them together and escaped with them into the hills. Over the hills and far away. Right, what we got here? So that's that. So for the last 10 minutes, I'll do some. For a bit longer, I'll do some funny stories. My throat's getting quite hurty now, so I think I'll probably wrap it up in a bit. Richard Freeman of the Centre of Fortean Zoology made the headlines when he discovered that some of the biscuits in a pack of jammy Dodgers he'd bought contained no jam. I've been attacked by a cobra, stalked by a tiger in Sumatra, and caught in a tornado in the Gobi Desert. But when a man can't have a whole jammy Dodger with his cup of tea, there's something wrong, he said. 2 drug smugglers realised they were in serious trouble when their boat ran aground on the remote Burton Island in Australia with 588 pounds worth of cocaine, ecstasy, and methamphetamine on board, and was spotted by the police. They fled the beached yacht, and tried to hide their haul under seaweed, but were then cornered by an angry seal that, according to officials, jumped up with its big chest out and bellowed at them, and had to be rescued by the coppers. Saquyt Khan. As soon as Tanat Tangtuanan from Sumat Prakan, Thailand, sat on the loo for a morning visit in early August, he felt a sharp pain in his testicles. Looking down, he found the source of the agony was a large python that had come up the toilet pipe and sunk his teeth into his scrotum. The man managed to shake the snake off his tackle and tried to drag it out of the bowl, but it was too strong, so he beat it to death with a toilet brush. Unfortunately, as pythons are not venomous, his injuries were minor. Oh dear, not good. For 6 years, staff at the Lindale Central Store in Wyke Regis, Dorset, have been duelling with a persistent avian thief they have dubbed Stephen Seagull, who sneaks in to grab bags of crisps from a display beside the door. Manager Stuart Harmer said the bird had thieved about 30 packets of crisps in the past 2 months alone. Trying to explain to the powers that be that I've got a stock loss because of a seagull, they think it's a joke, he said. Stephen is particularly fond of barbecue beef and sought out the flavour even when the staff booby-trapped the display with extra spicy crisps in an attempt to deter him. Salami, I like him. Yeah. Emergency services and the bomb squad rushed to a house in Billinge, Lancashire, after neighbours reported hearing an explosion. They found a man in his 80s with serious leg injuries. He'd been trying to open a safe containing gunpowder using an angle grinder with a predictable result. One of the attending firefighters described it as a once-in-a-career incident. Fucking dumbass. An attempt by an unnamed woman. Birds literally don't have pain receptors for capsicum. Oh, so it wouldn't have worked anyway then. An attempt by an unnamed woman to test her blind date's generosity in Zhejiang, China backfired. She ended up stuck with a £3,100 restaurant bill when her date fled after refusing to pay for the meals. Of the 23 relatives she had brought along without telling him. And that's why they're shelf stackers and not ornithologists. While visiting her son in Craighead County Juvenile Detention Centre, Arkansas, as Hobbit likes to call it, Jessica Williams, 37, ended up in custody herself. CCTV showed Williams putting money into a candy vending machine in the jail, then shoving it against the wall and backhandling the glass, shattering it. She helped herself to the contents before complaining to the prison officer that the candy machine was broken. He had Williams arrested, but despite her explaining that she had only attacked the machine because it had taken her money and not given her candy, deputies still charged her with theft and criminal mischief. Don't mess with the sixth system. A Rio de Janeiro pastry shop has caused a stir in Brazil. Named Putaria, it specialises in genital-shaped waffles and advertises them with neon signs saying things like tastier than your ex, which has proved popular with queues often forming outside the Ipanema bakery. However, it hasn't amused authorities who have banned the sale to minors of all products reproducing or suggesting the shape of human genitalia and or body parts with a sexual, erotic or pornographic notation, and required the shop to take down or cover up their signs, although apparently it hasn't affected sales. He's a good lad, he's Arkansas, yeah. Dutch farmer and politician Eric Steglink has had a big hit with pig milk ice cream. For sale at his Piggy's Palace farm, where visitors can come and view the animals and have picnics, like the pork ice cream is described as a bit fatty, nice and creamy with a strong gamey flavour. Hobbit, would you eat pig ice cream? Inquiring minds need to know. The fifth round of the Vancouver Intermediate Ladies Championship at St Finian's Gaelic Football Club in Canada had to be abandoned due to bears on the pitch. A second time the club has had to abandon a game due to bear incursions in recent months. A club spokesperson has blamed fame-hungry bears and said they definitely have the ladies' schedule back at the Den. They never miss a game. Is that halal pig ice cream? Pig milk is going to taste... So Hobbit says about pig milk, he says, pig milk is going to taste like their feed. Not for me, thanks. I find boar tastes like liver. Bacon milk can't be that bad. So, I don't know. Are you going to... So, you guys have got to go to... You got to go to Hobbit's favourite country. You got to go and see the Dutch to do that. So it's Dutch farmer and politician Eric Steglink. Let's have a quick look, see if I can find Eric Steglink's website. Oh. Yeah, I don't think I can find... No. Can't find nothing. He hasn't got a website, scumbag. Let's try Piggy's Palace Farm. Right, Piggy's... Robert Picton's farm. Couldn't find that, but I could find Robert Picton, the Vancouver women. Oh yeah. Robert Picton was a serial killer. Maybe we'll talk about him another time. No, I can't. He doesn't have a website, so I can't tell you any more about his farm. But he's Dutch and he lives in Dutchland. I would drink lady milk, but definitely not man milk. They do pregnant lady milk these days. That's supposed to be not very good. I know people who put it in their milk when they're desperate. And Hobbit says he can live his entire life without visiting Germany or Holland again. Of all the Florida Man things I've seen that might be Florida Maniest, an ex-user said regarding a viral 30-second video of a local using a live alligator to open a can of beer. In the clip, the man on the boat can be seen splashing in the water to get a small alligator's attention, then antagonising the reptile with a beer can until it bites it, piercing the can with its teeth. The man then swings from the open can to applause from the other men on the boat. Florida Highway Patrol pulled over Laura Riley, 41, in St. Petersburg on suspicion of drink driving, and on searching the car discovered a bag prominently labelled bag of drugs. This contained cocaine, crack, crystal meth, hydromorphone, amphetamines and alprazolam, plus an assortment of well-used drug paraphernalia, resulting in Riley's arrest on a variety of charges. In 2022, a tortoise named Clyde brought rail services between Cambridge and Norwich to a halt after being spotted ambling along the line. Now another tortoise has repeated the trick, bringing chaos to services between Ascot in Berkshire and Bagshot in Surrey by wandering onto the tracks, leading to 4 trains being cancelled while staff retrieved him. Shortly afterwards, another tortoise was spotted on the tracks near Southend Station in Essex, but was rescued without causing any disruption to services. Train operator C2C said that the tortoise was safely sheltering. Did you see what he did there? With ticket office staff, while locals commented he had been moving faster than the trains. So, and finally, Andy Bailey, 39, from Congleton, Cheshire, has taken to photographing local rubbish bins and posting them on Instagram on a quest inspired by finding a bin in the shape of a bear. He gives each bin a score out of 25, rating them on personality, placement, popularity, performance and pristine, and has evaluated more than 100. His favourite in a shopping centre earned 23, but he feels some are not fit for purpose, saying one's just a piece of metal on a stick, and giving it an 8. Isn't she that racist woman who is in jail for sticker crimes? Probably not. No. Anyway, that's me done. I'm solo, so I'm only doing. There's only one of me, so I'm only doing an hour. If there was two of us, we could do 2 hours. But it's Hobbit's fault because he's got AIDS. R.I.P. Hobbit. Anyway, that's me all done. Nighty night, folks. Good night, all.